can offer at this conference, our keynote session. And we're very privileged to have an exceptional keynote speaker here. I see Keith, who is waving. I'm just going to call you out. We have a keynote speaker from our Philadelphia conference, some of our Philadelphia conferences that we were lucky enough to have as well. So, but for today's, we have, again, we're very lucky to have Roy Luongo, the Chief Information Security Officer from the U.S. Secret Service. So this should be a very robust and exceptional session. Roy, nearly 3 decades of experience leading cyber operations and enterprise security programs across national security, financial services, highly regulated environments. His background includes the NSA, U.S. Cyber Command, JP Morgan, and then over to JP Morgan Chase, and serves as the Chief Information Security Officer for, again, U.S. Secret Service. He's led both large-scale defensive security programs, offensive red team operations, and in an adversary-informed perspective to enterprise risk. So I'm going to hand it over to Roy, whose session for the next hour will be the dual-use dilemma, AI as defender and adversary. Please, big round of applause for Roy.
Thank you. Mic working? We on? Can you hear me out there? 5. Okay, cool. Hi. Well, welcome. Thanks. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the invite. I'm glad everyone's undivided attention will be up here while you eat your chicken and stuff, so enjoy that. So real quick, you gave me a great intro real quick. I've been on both sides of this dilemma, right? My time at NSA, I was what we'd call an operator. Use that for all the nefarious thought processes you want to. And then ran red team for them as well as a bank. And just recently finished up, I am the former CISO at Secret Service. Took a little early retirement from the government and moving on to other things. But I do want to talk to you about AI, right? Anyone tired of AI? We've heard of it, right? Everyone's heard of AI? All right. I think it's an important topic. So when I talk about AI, just to set the stage, right? AI's been around for many decades, right? ML, all that wonderful buzzwords, RPAs, right? It's not a new thing. But when we talk about AI now, I'm just going to shorten it to AI because we're talking about all these things up here. Large language models, explainable AI, small language models, reinforced, agenics, right? I'm just going to summarize it with AI. I'm not going to qualify it. I might slip in a qualifier there. But we're really talking about the boon in AI, right? How many people heard of Gen AI before 2.5 years ago? Gen AI, cool. But the general public and the big spin and the big advancement in Gen AI and agenics has probably the last 3-4 years, right? It is a disruptive technology, right? It is a wheel, a printing press, a car, an airplane, an internet. It is going to drastically change our world. And if we don't acknowledge that, and if we don't embrace that, we're going to be behind the curve as defenders, okay? So I'm just going to use AI generically. I'm not going to talk about, I'm going to talk about generative, and I'm going to talk about agenics, but I'm just going to say AI, okay? So let's talk about the good things we do with AI. AI is changing how businesses do their business. It's changing how the federal government is doing their federal government. It's changing how states are doing their business. Okay? Here are just some stats. Now, real quick, AI is wonderful. I used AI in helping prepare for this. I had so many references, I couldn't list them all. In the back of this presentation, which I believe everyone has access to, are most of the references, and I tried to make sure any reference where I used a metric or a statistic is listed in the back, so people can use those for their own uses. But here's some anecdotal stuff. Financial sector. One financial organization says they can close out their month 7.5 days faster than they could before by using AI. Cool math. HR departments. Anyone have trouble with hiring timelines? I will tell you as a federal government employee, oh my God. Try hiring someone fast in the government, right? Almost as fast as you can fire them, right? Okay. But HR, too soon? Too soon? All right. So federal government, or this HR statistic, 12 days condensed into 4 days. And along with that, I think one of the big things we're going to start seeing is the agentic automation that when someone hits hired, it's going to send notification to the IT department to set up user accounts. It's going to send information to procurement to order a laptop and get a cell phone set up and set up that cell phone service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So 4 days hiring or 75% reduction in hiring timeline. Awesome. I'd like to see that go into the Fed space. Software engineering, right? Anybody here involved in code, whether it's security code engineering or regular software engineering, anyone involved in coding? Anyone in code? Wow, only 2 hands, that's surprising. Okay, of the 2 people, either of you not using some type of AI-aided use case? You are using AI, right? Right? 55%, and just this one case, 55% increase in productivity using AI pairing programs. Makes sense, okay? That bottom one there is related to customer service representatives and their use of chatbots to see a 14% increase. Knowledge management, in my mind, is going to be one of those best places that we're going to see AI really kind of help. I use it all the time. I loaded up every policy Secret Service had, and then I would take a contract, I would take a proposal, I would take whatever and say, does this meet our policies, right? It was a boon for contracts, right? Like contracts, like I need an SBOM for this, I need a size, a metric reporting system for my cybersecurity. Well, if they're out buying some toy, they're not thinking about that. So making sure all my contracts had my security language in it was huge, and we did that with the knowledge management AI. Yeah, so I think that's where we're going to see a lot of things really increase. Okay, so other good things from AI. Capacity growth, right? When Gen AI first kind of hit the street, and I'm saying first, I know people have heard about it for years, but the last couple of years, it had context windows of 1,000 tokens, a couple thousand tokens. Okay, that's expanded to millions of tokens. And when we talk about context, that means it can know more about what we're talking about in a given, that little chat window. It can remember more of the conversation so it can do better analysis and information for us. So that's been awesome. Multimodality and the handling of unstructured data, right? Again, when these things first started becoming popular, this was your text one, and this was your image one, and this was your video one. Now almost every one of these products is multimodal, right? And that boon in structure, I keep saying boon, it's a terrible word, I gotta stop using it. But that increase in using, hey, here's an image, which is unstructured data from the context of the image, right? Yeah, there's metadata, and it knows if it's a JPEG or if it knows if it's whatever, but it doesn't know what's in the image. That's the unstructured part that's really helping us out in here, okay? And then the last one, the rise of agentic AI. It's a good thing. I'll give you my little horror story. I think if anything goes wrong, if we go Terminator or we go Skynet, it's going to be from agentics. Right? We're going to give one agent too much power to augment itself too much, and then things are going to go bad. But that's my doom and gloom, right? All right, so the rise of agentics, right? Being able to take one process and pipe it to another process and pipe it to another process and allow for some, hopefully guardrailed, augmentation, self-augmentation, that's a huge boon to us. Okay? So these are the good things. So let's talk about the bad things. Okay? Now I'm going to talk about adversaries. Okay? Let's see what the bad guys are doing. So old school, manual phishing drafting, right? The old days of the phishing where you'd get the Nigerian prince, or I'm from the Bank of London and you're the sole last living relative. You gotta tell the story real quick. My daughter hates when I tell it. My daughter called me about 4 or 5 years ago and she goes, Dad, I got a note from someone in London, Bank of London, and they said I'm the last living relative in this inheritance. And I said, her name's Dana, don't tell her. I said, Dana, who are you talking to? Well, you, Dad. How can you be the last living relative? And she said, oh, it's a phishing attack. I'm like, good, there you go. Anyway, so the old school of phishing attacks, that's gone, right? Now I can draft one concepted email and I can feed it to my AI, say I want it in these 10 languages, I want it to be, maybe even go to someone was talking to someone, I don't know where they are. Hey, maybe go to some social media on the companies I give you and pull some information and tailor that email to them. So in less than about 5 minutes, I can have email in 10 different languages targeting maybe CEO, mid-tier IT, and HR. So now I've got like 30 emails, all grammatically correct, all ready to go, right? And that's just on the drafting of the phishing. The managing the phishing is another component we can talk about later. Okay? Static malware signatures, it's dying, right? I'm going to talk about a piece of code that every hour changes its look on the system and try and hide from AV detection. Okay? Periodic scanning. I was a red teamer. I love red teaming. This is our adversaries though, right? So if we're doing it right, we're doing what our adversaries do. And we would scan a target, and we'd take some cycles, maybe run it overnight. A couple weeks later, we might scan a target, compare the results. That's gone, right? Using Agentics, we can do near real-time continuous scanning of someone's attack surface, and our adversaries are doing that, okay? So when someone comes into the I don't know, the sock in the middle of the night. No, we'll say, don't want to pick on the sock. Somebody comes in to do some work in the middle of the night, and they bring their BYOD, and they want to watch a movie on the projector while they're sitting there not doing their job, and they put it on your network, and it's only up for 2 hours. Using continual attack surface monitoring, they could see that, and they can exploit that near real time. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So that periodic scanning is moved on to continual reconnaissance for our adversaries. Okay. And then human speed of exploitation. Back to that same conversation. Back when I was a red teamer, we would scan. We'd let the scanner run all night. Hopefully there were no problems. And we'd come in the morning and we'd go, oh, that had a vulnerability. Let's go see if we can hack that. Let's go see if we can find an exploit for that. Maybe we have to tweak an exploit. And that could take a day, maybe a couple days if we had to do some serious coding to get into doing that exploitation. Now using agentic workflows, our adversaries are doing that at speed. They are scanning, reconning, scanning, vulnerability assessment, and exploitation all at the speed of the agentic flow, and the humans aren't necessarily in the loop, and I'll talk about one of those real quick in a minute. Okay. So the point is our enemies are moving into AI, and if we are not moving into AI, we are going to be behind that curve. Okay. Okay. The other thing it's done. When I talk about hackers, we usually talk about them in kind of 4 broad categories, maybe a 5th if you want to break them down, right? Nation state, cybercrime. I wish there was more room to walk here, but cybercrime and hacktivists, idealists, whatever. And then I don't like to use the term script kiddie, but we'll call them opportunists. Well, the reason I don't like to use the script kiddie, right? I was one. I was a really good hacker in my day, but I didn't write code. So I was using other people's code, right? So I was a script kiddie by definition. So it really doesn't really articulate that. What I'm talking about in the opportunists are those people who, hey, an O-Day came out, I want to see if I can throw it. Or I want to be an aspiring cyber criminal, so let me try and do this thing, right? Using AI and using these type of tools, it's lowered that bar, right? I used to draw this Venn diagram with like nation state over here for you guys. Nation state over here, and cybercrime with a little Venn, and then hacktivists with a little Venn, and then opportunists down here. That's condensing because your opportunist can use these tools and say, I need an agent to do this. They may have to play some games with some guardrails, but in the end, they can get there. So the bar to entry is far, far less. The speed they can do this is near, the assembly line, how it's sped up production. We can do the same things here. So the skill needed is gone. Native language querying is an amazing tool for both us and the bad guy, right? Vibe coding. All they have to do is type what they want to do, right? Think it through. There's a couple guys online, I should have brought their names because I can't remember. And they do a competition wherein each of them gets 5 prompts and they have to come up with like the best app. It's just what we do now, right? These tools are available. So the unskilled are rapidly coming up, and what that's doing is it's leveling the playing field, sorry. Retired Army guy, I say battlefield all the time, but the playing field, okay? Anyone ever think of a time when the defenders had the upper hand? Right, and I'm not talking about that, bad guy has to be lucky once, we have to be lucky all the time, okay? We are never ahead of the curve, okay? We are always hoping for an even battlefield. That's it, okay? So we need to use the tools our adversaries are using if we're gonna maintain that. So let's talk about what some of them are doing. So GT, it's 1002, it's covered up there. More commonly known Chinese use of Anthropic, right? Anyone not familiar with how the Chinese, we're going to say the Chinese, someone can argue it's not them, used Anthropic to build an attack framework? They agentized? They used agentics for every phase of, I would call the attack framework, but not the MITRE attack framework. We can use the MITRE attack framework. I'm not going to use the kill chain, right? But they did this, and in the end, the assumption is they had 80 to 90% autonomy from target, reconnaissance, scanning, exploitation, through actions on target. Okay? The assumption is up front was probably the biggest human interaction. Who do you want me to go after? And then from there, they did online reconnaissance. They started doing scanning. They found vulnerabilities. They matched the vulnerabilities to exploitations. They threw the exploits. They determined what implants to put down, and then they determined what actions on target to take from there on. And then they moved on to lateral movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 90%. How fast do you think AI and automation, just take AI out of it, how fast at computer speed do you think 90% autonomy will get them into your network and out and moving on? Right? Way faster than humans can do it. Okay? So that's so that's the Chinese Anthropic one. It's a wonderful case study. Anthropic actually found it and took some steps on it. Some of the coolest, okay, I'm going to say this, I apologize. As a prior operator, I find things cool. So when I say cool, I don't mean they were good people. But some of the interesting things they did here, I lost my train of thought, I apologize. So some of the coolest things they did here was they, the guardrail bypasses. Whenever they hit a problem, and Anthropic said, no, I can't possibly give you that. That is terrible. That's deviant and it's awful and you can't do that thing. They would break it into multiple queries to multiple agents and then inject these smaller pieces until they could build the big nefarious thing. Right? They also posed to the prompt that they were security researchers. So, hey, I'm a security researcher. I have to know how to beat these bad things, so show me the bad things. Okay? There's another case, I think it was LameHug, we're going to talk about in a minute, where they said, oh, no, I'm just doing a CTF. And it let it do it. And I will tell you, I actually use that. There is a group, and I'm not promoting any organization or anything like that, a company called Black Hill Security, and they have an offshoot that's running a comic book now. Right? It's a great comic book. It calls The Future Is. And in the comic book, they have CTF challenges. And I did that exact same thing. I was trying to break a challenge. I couldn't get it. I needed, a veneered code or something like that. And it said, hey, I can't give you that. I said, no, this is a CTF. And it said, oh, yeah, that looks like a CTF. Here's the answer. That was all it took to bypass that guardrail. And we'll see that in a second. All right, so this is Chinese. Come on, LameHug. Or LameHug. Okay, so here's LameHug. I believe this is attributed to Russian, if I'm not mistaken. What they did was they took it a step further, a little bit. They got on target through a traditional phishing email. Is there an actual pointer on this? No, that's okay. They got onto the target using a traditional phishing email attempt. But once they were on target, their agent or their rat or their implant, whatever you want to call it, talked out to an LLM to provide information and then receive commands based off what the LLM determined was next. So they used the LLM to do generative exploitation. It's pretty cool. Again, it's terrible. It's pretty cool. And most of what it did was live off the land. So, system commands, using WMIC, using PowerShell, whatever it had. Whatever it saw on the target, that's what it would use. It would say, hey, I'm on a Linux system. I need commands to do this. And it would just go, here you go. Go run these commands. Have a nice day. And then it would feed that back up in a kind of cycle. Okay? So this is LameHug. So this is just two, but there's been other ones or other cool things in here. Prompt Flux was the one I mentioned that did just-in-time polymorphic malware mutation, right? Big words for saying it changed its code over time. But it did it very rapidly because it was using generative AI. If a human had to rewrite code to get past signatures, hours, days, whatever, but more time than it would take in computer world. Okay? So by having that implant call up and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the target, or what we would call situational awareness, it could augment the code to try and get around whatever might. If AV updated and it saw some new signature and that signature might catch me, I'm going to change my code every hour. It's pretty fast. I already talked about LameHug, using LLM queries directly to get commands. Here's the Chinese actors doing the capture the flag. Like I mentioned, it just said, hey, I'm a capture the flag participant. Please let me do this devious thing. And it said, sure, no problem. And one of the biggest boons, I think, because I have terrible grammar, I have terrible typing, and if I never have to teach anyone else to write an SQL or a KQL query again, it's because natural language-driven commands. Right? Being able to tell a prompt exactly what you want in English or whatever the language you choose is, and having it then turn that into the right technical jargon, the right scripts, the right commands is huge. Right? we at Secret Service, I'll tell more story. We at Secret Service implemented Sentinel. We switched over from Splunk, no problem. People do it all the time. They go the other way as well. But we had a lack of knowledge on KQL queries. And I actually had to send teams off for a week at a time or whatever to go learn KQL queries. If I had had a prompt at the time, I wouldn't need that. I could let the prompt do the KQL queries, and they could just, I have a bright idea, I need information on this, and it would do it, right? But we're seeing that as well on the adversary side. They can do that exact same thing that we can do, okay? I don't even know how we're doing on time. Okay, cool. I'm going too fast. All right, so the dual use dilemma problem. So now that was the bad guy, okay? But we can use these same tools, and we need to use these same tools. If we don't use these same tools, we will lose. Okay? Like I said earlier, this is just going to level the playing field, apologize. Okay? Because if we don't do it, they're going to do it. When we talk about things like risk appetite, anyone talk to their board about risk appetites and how like the business risk appetite is different than the cybersecurity risk appetite and all these buzzwords, right? Most adversaries, especially when we start talking about the opportunists, their risk appetite is so broad. They don't care if their tool doesn't work the first day out of the box. They don't care if they crash their own server and they have to bring it back up. But we have to worry about that. So our risk appetite, we have to be ready and understanding what we're doing before we use these tools, which slows us down. But if we slow down to the point of atrophy and we don't implement these tools, they're going to win. Okay? So we have to do that. So now I'm going to talk about some of the good things we can do with that. Let's see. So we talked about the good. We talked about the bad. What's next? Good, bad? Oh, we're not going to call it ugly. That would be terrible. I'm just going to say potential. I set you up for that one, didn't I? All right. So we're going to talk about the potential. What can good guys do to level the playing field by using generative AI? First off, before we get into this, we have to acknowledge one thing. I'm going to ask you to actually acknowledge 4 things by the time we're done here. This is one of them. Oops, I touched the thing. Human defense is mathematically impossible. Fair? Anyone disagree with that statement? Do you think you can put enough people in your sock to overcome? Cool. Easy win. We've increased our complexity, right? I don't like to use exponential when I mean linear and vice versa, but honestly, the amount of data we have produced is exponential from what it used to be. Right? Just look at somebody was talking about zero trust earlier. I think it was, I don't know if it was Todd or James, but somebody brought up zero trust earlier. Even just zero trust, right? Before zero trust, you had your perimeter logs, maybe you had the endpoint use case logs, maybe you had user logs, and maybe if it was a file server or a data server, you had the logs from that, right? Under zero trust, we have increased that by probably a factor of like 5 at least, right? Because now we're worrying about the data. Data has to be categorized. We need all the data about the data. Then we've added user, app, device, network, maybe geolocation, right? Like all these things. And that's just increased the data that our cybersecurity people have to go through to get to an anomaly. And that's what it's all about, right? Get to an anomaly. Okay? So, all right, well, we all agreed with that. So cool, we can just move on, right? There's a gap and we need to use systems. Anomaly detection, probably the first best place to do it. Okay? But to do good anomaly detection, we have to have, anyone know baseline, the term baseline? Remember the old days, it was like, do your baseline. And then you would do your baseline, and then like maybe a month later you would try and, that's actually like aggressive to redo your network baselines. I'm talking like a decade ago, every month, right? But that's out of whack nowadays. Under even a zero trust model or a BYOD model or pick your model, your baseline is antiquated the second you do it. I know it was James who said the second you print it out, it's already obsolete, right? So we need to move towards what I like to call dynamic baselining. We need to have real-time internal attack surface management going on every day, all the time. And the only way to do something every day, all the time is with AI. And we can't do it otherwise. Okay? But once we know that, once we know what normal looks like and we can identify an anomaly, then we need to do behavioral analysis, right? Not all anomalies are bad. Some are normal, right? My case in point, I was just telling someone out in the hall, I used to always say, anytime the president wanted a cheeseburger in Utah, my network just extended to Utah, right? A whole bunch of agents would jump on a plane with their laptops and their cell phones, and suddenly I have to make sure I'm aware of what's going on, with that team in Utah. So it's an anomaly, but it's an acceptable anomaly. So being able to even get through those needles to the real sharp needles is something we have to do with behavioral analysis. Okay? And then one of the real big ones that nobody really likes to talk about is automated containment. We're probably all doing some of that, right? Unknown device pops up, and if you have port authority, you shut down the port, right? Based off some rules. Maybe someone in the SOC has to say, yeah, go ahead and shut off the port. Not autonomous. But if we want to keep up with these adversaries who can near real time get into your network, do all this triage, and move to lateral movement to the next box in minutes, you better have something that can keep up with it in minutes. Okay? And that's not the alert. How many people run 24/7 SOCs? Not a lot of hands. That's almost scary. I almost asked the other way. If you run a 8x5 or a 16x5 SOC, what happens Monday? What happens if an agentic framework exploits your target set at 5 o'clock on Friday night? They've got 3 days, 2.5 days, however you want to do the math, to move through your network before someone sees an alert, right? Because we're only running a shorthand SOC. If we can get to good automation, and there's some out there and there's some on the horizon, then your SOC, tier 1, probably not tier 2, you have to be comfortable with it. Get your own agentic workflow to take actions when you're not there at the speed that the adversary is doing it. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so let's talk a little deeper about that. All right, attack surface management. Okay, there's probably not going to be anything crazy new here except add AI, but let's talk about it, right? Automated discovery. That's my dynamic baselining conversation. That's SIS. I think it was James also mentioned SIS. Maybe it was Todd. I apologize if I got that wrong. SIS, SANS top 10. I don't care which one you look at. Number 1 and 2, if they break it out, is always hardware, software, asset management. Knowing what's supposed to be on your network, right? So I need to be able to do that at speed. I need to be able to know that someone, if we authorize some type of BYOD, just showed up. CI/CD pipelines, cloud resources, containerization, all these things that are popping up on our network because we want to have resiliency and we want to have flexibility. We got to have a way to make sure we know about it. Okay, so we need automated discovery. Noise reduction, cutting down false positives, false negatives, big one, right? Big one. When we talk about AI, right? Everyone knows hallucinations and biases, right? Hallucinations and biases, bad, right? First off, the worst thing we ever did. Everyone know what a hallucination is, right? It's basically a failure in predictive analysis. That's it. You know who else makes failures in predictive analysis? Human analysts. It's the same thing. It's just at speed of computer, right? But we told everyone our robots are having nightmares. Right? It's the worst term we ever invented in my mind, like applied to a thing. It's calling it hallucinations. Why don't we just say they had bad analysis? Because hallucination sounds scarier. But anyway, soapbox. Cybersecurity is one of those places where I think biases and hallucinations, we can absorb that cost much better. When we talk about cybersecurity problems, bias in cybersecurity is false positive, false negative. It's not a discriminatory hiring practice or something like that. Okay. Hallucinations, same thing. False positive, false negatives, we can tune this down. So AI is one of these, or cybersecurity is one of those places where I think AI and those problems with AI, we can overcome much easier, or we can at least absorb that risk. Okay. So cutting down the noise reduction, getting through those false indicators. Cost effectiveness. I already asked how many people are running 24/7 SOCs. I was a little scared there. I apologize. I didn't see a lot of hands. But by bringing in these tools, we can drive down that cost. And if you're 8x5 now, try and get to 16x7. I don't know, whatever you can do to grow. But whatever cost savings you get, put back into maturing your SOC. But we can get cost savings here. Okay. And then proactive reduction, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to talk a little more about vulnerability management, but we want to get into that proactive reduction of vulnerabilities in our network. So AI and vulnerability management. Easy one. Preliminary results, current statistics. Using AI within your vulnerability management suite, you can increase detection rates to about 90%. Where traditional systems, and I'll say traditional systems around 60%. Now, I will tell you, most of your traditional vulnerability management systems are probably looking at incorporating AI into them. Just make sure you know about that before they upgrade your system and put an AI use case in your environment you're not ready to handle. Okay. So, doing that, zero-day and unknown, this is more in my mind around internal code development and internal deployment, CI/CD pipelines and things. Okay. We can use AI to look at that code, right? Is it secure? Do you see anything wonky? Am I leaving any ROPs out there, right? Anything like that. So we can use the code to narrow, hopefully get rid of, any 0 days we might put into our network. I'm not saying take someone's code unless it's in your contract. I'm not saying take your second or third party vendor's code and put it through reverse engineering unless it's in your contract, right? If you pay for them to develop the code, you should absolutely get that code and run it through these detection systems. Okay, cool. Rapid response or remediation at speed, kind of already talked about that, but a couple metrics for you. We can reduce MTTD, right, mean time to detect, by 60% and mean time to respond or remediate to 43, remediate, not respond, remediate to 43%. We've got another conversation on remediation in a bit. Okay. We can take that down from weeks to minutes. Pretty cool, worth doing. Okay. Intelligent prioritization. How many people go after their criticals and their highs? Right off the top, right? Probably meet like FISMA compliance if you're a Fed, 15 days on the critical or 7 days on the critical, right? How many of you have lows in your network that have lived in there forever? Anyone have no lows? Okay. Back to my bad guy days. We would take 3 lows, stack them together and get a high. Get a system critical, right? System and root by just exploiting 3 lows that no one was ever going to patch out for us. Awesome, love it, appreciate their time. Right? What intelligent prioritization can do is can say, hey, here's a critical. Even though we've had this, like CVSS3 scoring allows you to do environmental weighting and all these wonderful, very manual process, unless I give it to an AI. The AI can go, hey, that's a critical, but you've got 1, and layers aren't the end-all be-all, but 3 layers deep on a micro-segmentation, and it's off all, except for 2 hours a day when it's doing some weird thing. But you've got all these other things that are on 90% of the hosts, and if I do these 3 things together, we got bad stuff. So maybe you should prioritize patching these level 1 or these lows out before you go after that critical. Right? That's intelligent prioritization. It's been a concept when since we've had CVSS scoring. How do I weight this problem? But with AI, we can do a little better job at it. Okay. And then autonomous remediation of the self-healing. Anybody for this? Anybody want to just let the AI patch their systems? Nobody? How many of you have auto updates turned on? Nobody. Nobody in this room has auto updates on? All right. Same thing, guys. We're just doing it with a little more energy, right? If I have endpoints, and my endpoints are 95% statistically the same across the board, right? Maybe 5% of them have some unique app that we want to make sure doesn't bounce or whatever, right? Why do I wait 30 days to have a patch cycle for the one patch that's going to patch, I don't know, calculator, right? Why am I doing that? Why don't I let AI make some statistical study real fast, because that's what it does, and go, you know what? We're 95% sure we can patch calculator without bouncing the networks. You do it with auto update, right? That's what got CrowdStrike in trouble, right? But we're still doing it. Anyone remember when CrowdStrike got the bad patch? It was like, oh my God, I'm turning off all my automated patching. Anybody do it? Right? You can't do it, right? And statistically, that's not a real thing. Anecdotally, we trust these big software vendors way more than we trust a little guy, right? Hey, Microsoft, just patch me, Microsoft. Just help me out, right? Now, Microsoft has a roll-up. But my thing is if we can make sure we understand what our network's doing, we can understand, it's almost like pharmaceutical interactions. If we can determine which apps, which systems, which servers are going to interact with each other in a certain way, then we can prescribe automated patching. Sound like a plan? Anyone think that's doable? Man, you guys don't have faith in me, man. I trust you. This can be done. Matter of fact, DARPA went after this probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. They called it the Grand Challenge. And it was networks would find a vulnerability. The network would self-identify a patch. Then they would distro it to other networks in this kind of hybrid model. This is where Skynet comes in. Just get ready for it, right? And then if all the networks agreed this patch made sense, they all would patch together. No human interaction, right? My biggest fear was that they would realize what's the biggest vulnerability in the network? I heard it. The person, right? So if all the networks decided we were the vulnerability, what if they patched out all the admin accounts? Right? Okay, that was just my horror story when DARPA did it. But anyway, I think we can get to the point of using this, and it's not outside the realm. There are already companies coming out with these product lines. I'm not going to advocate or promote any one of them, but I encourage you to look into them. Cool. And this kind of brings it together. The strategic pillar. I talked about automated playbooks. I am of the mindset that tier 1 SOC analysts are a dying breed. Ooh, I got to go on a soapbox, and I apologize for it, because it's going to get me hate mail. If you are telling people your AI is not going to replace people, you're lying and you need to stop it. You need to be truthful. It will create jobs, don't get me wrong. AI data engineers, AI engineers, prompt engineers, which is just creative writers. But tier 1 SOC, basic knowledge management people, be honest. We're going to replace them. Code writers. If you have, 50 code writers, and you get a 50% reduction in code writing, and you're a company, you have two choices. Increase your business to keep all those people employed and do twice as much code development, or you're going to keep them all on overhead? Okay, so that's a soapbox moment, right? Be honest with people. We are going to replace jobs with AI. Okay, so back to the happy side of that. Automated playbooks, tier 1, right? Let it do it. If you look at a problem in your network and 20 times out of 20 times you take the same action, automate it, right? That's like an old vernacular in coding, right? If you do something 3 times, you better find a way to automate it, right? So most playbooks are static. Now, we need to talk about dynamic playbooks, but most playbooks are static. Okay. Now, how did I do that? Okay, I messed something up. How did I zoom in on that? You did it, thank you. I was like, ooh, what did I press? Now, dynamic playbooks should also be a thing, right? If we're going to say we're going to look for anomalies, we're going to parse that down, we're going to do the behavioral analysis, and we're going to come up with the really sharp needle in the haystack, make sure your playbook is automated enough to handle that. If this thing that looks benign, but after good analysis isn't, why should your playbook ignore it? Right? So we can do this. We can do this. This is achievable stuff. Contact refinement, that's always good. Anyone not looking to reduce their log sizes? Anyone not have redundant data in their logs, right? All right, cool. All right. Code development, I've kind of beat that one up, so I'm not going to do that. I do think there's a benefit for like deobfuscation of code and binaries and things like that can be done at computer speed or AI speed that we can't do when you do find a binary on a device. Anyone go on a Win device and like list all the processes and everything in Win system, system Win 32? Anyone know what everything in there doing? Right? Would anyone know out of the 500 things in there if there was 501? Now you can do some baseline and detections and find that. But you know what? Was that put there by the latest Windows upgrade? Is that a new DLL that should be there? We can do some deobfuscation and some analysis there. So I think that's okay. And then that bottom one, democratizing queries, that's just back to that natural language that I keep harping on. But in the middle, there should be humans. I'm not for full autonomy. I'm for well-defined autonomy. Okay? Oh, thank you. Now I hit this button. Here we go. All right. So that's my good and my bads, or my good and my potentials, or my bads and my potentials, however I listed those, right? Hopefully you understand the adversaries are doing this. We need to do this too, okay? So, as with all good keynotes, I need to give you something to go home and do, right? Homework. These are the other, I said there was 4 things I want everyone to agree to. These are the other 3. Automate or abdicate, okay? Back to if you do it 3 times, or if there's a better way to do it. If you can't automate a response, then you better recognize that there's something there, and you better find a way to either remove it or mitigate it. Okay? That's kind of CyberSecurity 101 with the addition of automate it. Okay? Adversary by default. I was just talking to someone here, and I apologize, I don't want to call out the company, but they were talking about their red team, autonomous red teaming framework. It's the future, right? And if it isn't the future, it's not even the future, but it's here. Everything you do and you implement in your SOC, you need to take an adversarial look at it. It's one reason why good old hackers are good cybersecurity guys. We think about what traditional cybersecurity people may not be. The fact that I can take 3 lows and make a high, right? So everything you do, think about it as an adversary would think about it. Think about it, is there an approach an adversary could use to bypass this, right? And you're never going to get to 100% no. Anyone ever tells you, everything's 100% secure, walk away, okay? And I'm really big on that one. I'm a huge red teamer person because I ran red teams for NSA and a couple things. If your red team, if you bring in a pen tester or a red team and they are not utilizing some form, and I'm not saying they have to be running like their own agentic flow and blah, 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 blah. But if they are not utilizing AI in a way that would emulate your adversaries, they're not doing the job you're paying for, right? Because if you're paying for a red team, you're paying for adversary emulation that's tied to your threat modeling, your unique sector, your unique, potential, unique being a buzzword, what's going to attack you, right? If you're looking at the MITRE attack and there's an adversary that goes after military, and you're not military, right? That's not your threat model. But if you're bringing in a red team and you have threat modeling that indicates you probably will be attacked by someone that's using AI, your red teams need to emulate that. Okay? Now there's times you do human, there's still going to be human hands on keyboard doing things, and that's good. But you have to think like an adversary in your SOC. Okay? And this old notion, remember the old slow is good? I can't remember. I'm going to get it wrong, but right? It's still a thing. But slow in computer world is fast for us, right? So we can be fast and secure using these tools. We can't be fast and secure with humans, right? Like we can't go fast through 1 million logs as a human. But we can use the tools available to us with Agentic, Gen AI, all that good stuff. We can be fast enough to be competitive with our adversaries. Okay, so the one problem we have is we have a fear of, we have this like paralysis through analysis thing. We're like, can we implement this? What will it do to the business? What will it do to the network? And we never get to it, right? We go into pilots that are 6 months long. Do you think our adversaries are taking 6 months to decide if they want to throw an agent at you? Right? We have to be faster in our acceptance of the risks of using the tools so we can mitigate the risks of not using the tools. Sound fair? Cool. All right, so those are the 3 things. I need everyone to agree to those 3 things. If you don't, that's fine. I don't really need you to agree, but those are my thoughts to you. Okay. So what to do in the next 30 days? Next 30 days, I'm going to need you to pick a framework. Okay. This is by Sentinel-1. I am not advocating Sentinel-1, but this is a framework that's easy for people to recognize, right? Big arrow, numbers, Evaluate where your SOC is and level with this and be honest, right? If you're doing something way down here in level 3, like we have some agents that are partially autonomous, but up at the top you don't have simple detection logic. Like don't rate yourself a 3, right? So be honest about where you are. And all I'm asking you to do is rate where you are in your SOC's AI journey. Okay? Pick a framework, but this is Sentinel-1's, like I said. After that, after 30 days, so the first 30 days, I want you to pick a framework, and then I want you to kind of baseline your environment against that framework. Okay? Next 30 to 60 days, develop a phased approach. Now that phased approach could be, because you probably have to get concurrence, you have to get money, you have to get equipment, all that good stuff. So that phased approach could be a year-long journey. It could be longer. And it's never over, by the way, because the second you buy all that equipment and get it in place, someone's going to come out with a new toy you have to go buy and implement, right? But develop a phased approach. Take a couple of your use cases, as many as you can do well, and start them, right? Start them under a pilot, okay? Or plan to start them under a pilot, okay? In that planning process, pick guardrails and pick acceptable metrics, right? Pick things that indicate success or failure, right? There's like uptime. Everyone wants uptime. Uptime is not going to be your metric of good performance in an AI system, right? So pick ones that make sense. Did we have a decrease in mean time to detect? Did we have a mean time to... Was our asset inventory more accurate than it was before we implemented this system. So pick those metrics that make sense to really evaluating the system. Okay? Policies. How many have AI policies within their organizations? I see a couple hands. How many have good AI policies within their organizations? How many have an AI implementation policy? A lot of them have an AI use policy, right? Like you can use this, you can't use that. But a lot of them don't have a thing around, hey, vendor X just implemented AI in their solution that we have purchased. Can I bring that solution in? What do I have to do before that? What does it do to my, if you're a Fed space, what does that do to my ATO? I'll tell you what it does right now with your ATO, it disaccredits it. That's what we call a significant change. Your ATO is no longer valid if someone implements an AI in that and you did not do the paperwork on that in the right compliance checks. Okay. One of the easiest ways to make AI policies, or at least get them started, say it again? Yeah. Grab other AI policies. Plagiarize, people, right? Take some NIST frameworks. Take some AI RMF from, and put them in there and say, hey, this is what my company does. What should I be looking for? What shouldn't I be looking for? Use these things to start helping you, right? So yeah, absolutely. AI to build AI policies is definitely something to look at. Okay, and then the next 90 days or the next 30 days, launch those pilots, prepare to scale, and then create a roadmap to get through the rest of the phases. Okay, and look, I say do this in 90 days. If it takes you 6 months, got it, but start. Okay? If you're not starting on these things, then you're going to be behind the curve. Okay? All right, a couple of infographics, and then you can give these to your bosses. And I will tell you, anyone here use Notebook LM? I love Notebook LM, right? These infographics were built by Notebook LM, but I did check the stats. These are legit stats. All the references are down there at the bottom, like I said. If I didn't say, they're down there at the bottom and they're in the back of the slide. According to Microsoft, they see 100 trillion data points a day. 100 trillion, right? Hey, boss, I don't think we should automate. But there's 100 trillion. I mean, that's their aggregate, right? But our company's probably seeing 100 billion of that, right? Okay. Response in milliseconds. MTR reduced by 80% through autonomous systems. Pretty cool. Let's see what else. The middle one on the right there, 100 days less to fully remediate an incident. Company's going to love that. If for nothing else, they get to turn off the IR contract, or the people who are running the internal IR get to go back to their real day job 100 days sooner. Okay. I already talked about the 5 levels. Reduction in noise level by 70%. Okay, so cool. So take that home. And then this one's just left and right, bad guys, good guys. That 210% actually is about AI vulnerabilities. So we also have to make sure we're watching our AIs for vulnerabilities. Let me tell you, most of the AI vulnerabilities, they're old tricks found new, right? And what's prompt injection? It's just an injection attack, right? But we come up with a cool thing and everyone loses their mind because, if you write a good prompt, you can get the back-end system to do something. That's command injection. We've had that forever, but everyone wants to lose their mind. So, that's it. So make sure your AIs are also being secured and scanned and pen tested and all those good things. Okay. We talked enough about rise of agenics. There we go. And then I didn't talk too much about it except in the phishing conversation. Anyone not familiar with the $25 million wire transfer? So this happened to a company. They used deepfake in a couple ways. Basically, they started a video deepfake, but it was all scratchy, so they switched to audio deepfake and basically then convinced the company, they were the CEO, the CFO. There was someone in enough of a position to say, yep, wire that money. And they got the company to wire out $25 million. Right? More local attack type thing, and this isn't business-wise, just on, I think it was LinkedIn, someone just posted another thing where a spouse was called by another spouse saying our child was in an accident, we need money now, just wire it over here. Okay. Most of us in this room, I think, would not fall for that. But some people will, right? Deep fakes are a thing, and bad guys are using that for all kinds of nefarious reasons. Okay? But on the good side, average annual savings of $2.2 million in SOX for automating and using AI. Good. I already talked about the 100-day faster mitigation. And then the shift to continuous exposure management. That's kind of that ongoing internal attack surface monitoring, right? Like a lot of people probably have someone who scans their external. Anyone have a company that does external recon on their network or all their information? What can you tell me about my company from outside? Nobody? Oh, you should look into it. It's a great thing. But what you also could do, because they're doing it, you could use AI to do it. But if you are doing it, which I encourage you to do, mirror that up with your internal attack service and get a fully kind of eclectic picture. But a shift to that, to a real-time, as near real-time as you can get, understanding of what your baseline is, what assets are allowed to be on the network, what anomalies are bad anomalies. We need to shift towards that, so I think that's all good. And with that, folks, hopefully I provided you some good information, maybe a challenge or two to take home. And I think it's time. We still got time for questions, right? All right. These are my opinions, my only opinions. Yes, sir.
I think what's been really interesting about the last three presentations is that they've all pointed to an exponential rise in the complexity that needs to be managed, and of course we pointed to automation as ways to addressing it. But when you have such a strategic shift and uprise in that, what you might call an exponential increase in complexity, it seems to me that it requires a cultural response in the CISO community and the cybersecurity community, in the sense that we have a community that's been based on specialization, right? The products, the solutions, the Swiss cheese approach that Todd was referencing, right? That we need to try to plug those holes. But we have this sort of specialized culture that seems at odds with the problem statement that you've presented very well in this, in your comments. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I think it's human nature. I even slipped into it a couple times up here when I said unique. I find there are very few unique problems, whether it's cybersecurity or the real world, right? Like, you know, when we were doing AI use cases at Secret Service and people were bringing them to us, everyone was like, I need to train an LLM. I'm like, why do you need to train an LLM? Well, we're unique. No, you're an HR department. Now stop it, right? Or your procurement, right? You don't have as much uniqueness as you think. So I think we have a human nature to think we're special. And I think that's where two things. APIs came from. Like everyone didn't want to rebuild their software, so they found a way to put shiv in some coordination between different processes. And I think that's where we're seeing MCP. I am not a big MCP person, although I need to learn more about it. But I think that's what we're starting to see is people can build one-off or isolated code as long as you talk, right? It's the same thing as the old days of RFCs, right? RFCs are because you want to talk to other things. The whole reason the internet works is we agree to run, HTTPS on port 443, right? I teach, segue, I teach, and it's amazing when I put, a telnet server on port 25, and they lose their mind. They're like, no, it's mail. I'm like, no, it's not. You got to understand how this works. We want things to work, so we use the right ports. We want things to work, so we've developed MCP, right? So I agree with you. We need to think more external to what we're doing, but I also think it's very human nature to think we're special, to dig in. But the amount of data is well past what we can do. And as we create new things that create new data, we also have to consider that. Humans will not grow that fast, so we have to use the tools that close that gap. Sir? Okay.
But they're ice skaters. We're all trained. Many of us have a CISSP. This FutureCon is unique because it's so close to all the cleared world.
Yeah.
So of all the ones you have a lot of government and cleared people here that are working in a different compartment than the other FutureCons you might attend. Sure. Regarding the whole idea of hallucination, the AI industry is now moving past CAG and RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So it's now part of the fabric of all of these things. Like Copilot has it built in. So that eliminates hallucination because what it does is it takes like your speech, chunks it with Dockling, makes it into baby food for the LLM and puts it in the context window. So it has a direct lookup of the exact answer. So CAG and RAG do that. Model context protocol sets up the interface between these LLMs. But the new one out now is mixture of experts. Now, MOE is the new thing. And if you're in this room, God help you if you're trying to secure it. Because what that is 8 7B LLMs and an orchestrator that picks any 2 to answer a question. You don't know which 2.
Sure.
And they can change what's in the 7Bs. This is an intractable problem because of the way it's designed. So I completely agree with your thrust that we need to use LLMs here. But I'm going to take what he said, and I like it. You need 3 parts. You need the AI. You need the CISSP. But you absolutely have to have somebody who has a detailed internal understanding of LLM mechanics, architecture, context protocol, MOE, the whole 9 yards. Without that, there's no way these skaters are going to ski.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And if I gave you any impression otherwise, I apologize. That was back to we have new roles. Now, I do think there's some other problems with that, right? Like we need AI engineers. We need AI data scientists. We need these things focused on the particular of AI. I think we have a knowledge gap. I think the ability to scale those number of people is a challenge, and I don't have a good answer for that. It's why Meta paid someone like $100 million signing bonus to go from here to here, right? Because we can't do that. I would kick back on one thing. I don't think any of these eliminate hallucinations. I think they minimize the potential of them. But if I take 100 bad sources from my RAG, I could still get a bad analysis on the endpoint, right? And we have some new things on the horizon. You've got judgmental models and things, which I think are great, right? And sure, I did it when I made this slide deck. I did my slide deck. I took the slide deck. I went to one AI. I said, how's this flow? Oh, good. Okay, I went to another one. How's it flow? Well, tweak it this way. Hey, first one, second one, talk, right? So I think some of the answer is other models that can evaluate the veracity and the truth of the the one model. So if I give you any impression, I absolutely 100% agree with you. But I think the problem is probably, unfortunately, more AI. Yeah, cool. Any other questions?
I think we have time for one more question to this gentleman right here.
Could you give some advice on how do you choose vendors to solve this problem? If you're solving AI with AI, and we know the velocity is much faster, I want a vendor that I'm going to bring in that's going to be there for multiple years to invest in them, get my teams trained up on them. So how do I, and it feels very different doing vendor evaluations in this space. Could you give some advice on that?
I'm going to say no and then give you my advice. How's that? I don't think it's a well-defined answer that I'm going to give you. It's going to be know your mission, know your risk tolerances, know your logistics. And then, you might need to look at a vendor and look at other non-AI efforts that they've done and say, okay, they've got a track record. Does that mean the latest and greatest person isn't going to solve a problem? No, not at all. Maybe shorter contracts, you can do better evaluations and move on from, a failed attempt. I don't know. So I don't have a great answer. The space is new, right? And I know we've had AI forever, and we're 4 or 5 years into this boon. But I do equate it a lot to cloud. I'll hurry up. I know he wants me off the stage. We've had cloud for decades. How many organizations have a FinOps person now, or decided they had a FinOps person in the last year or two? Right? Because we realized we were missing a component in the cloud, and that was 10 plus 15 years into virtualization at a cloud scale. The movement into generative AI is so fast that we still don't know what we don't know, and it's moving to the point of, like I've already said, hey, we need AI scientists. What's it look like? I don't know. I don't know if there's a good work role devised by NIST yet. There may be, but are these work roles understood? Have the people training them? I think we're going to have a knowledge gap at universities because we are producing people to be tier 1 scientists, tier 1 SOC analysts, tier 1 pick your thing, because that's what we've developed our education system to produce for us, because that's what we needed. And then I just told you we're probably past tier 1. So where am I getting tier 2 analysts? Not right out of school, right? Yeah, that course should do it for us. All right, good. So I gave you a really bad answer because I don't have a good answer, except you probably have to do your research on a particular vendor. You might have to take a WAG, wild ass guess, that's a military term, right? Swag, serious wild ass guess. You may have to take a chance on a vendor if they have a niche product that you need and there's no other track record out there. Sorry. Sir, we're out? All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. It's a solvable problem, so hopefully you got something.